So in the last class, we had seen how to display an array object using map method. So we are going to use that in this session as well. And in this session, we will be focusing on how to fetch API. We'll be having we'll be writing few programs, and in that we will see how we can fetch API and how we can update these APIs. So APIs are nothing but application programming interface. So this is these interfaces are basically used to interface between applications. So no matter what technology is being used to creating an API, but the front end application can use it, right? So it is platform independent, right? So that's the basics of API. Let's go ahead and create an API, or no create write a program to access an API. So I have an index.js here. I'm going to create a new component called view1.js. This is my new component. Let me hide this, and okay, in index, I'm going to call view1. There's nothing at this time. Okay, and I have to import as well. Import view1, view1, um, view1, right? So this is okay. So this is how we created, and in the view one, I'll just give C tab, and I have a blank function or component created. So let's see how it looks. So here is what our browser is, where we can monitor or watch the output of our program. All right. So let's do this. Okay. And we are going to access, let's take a look at a couple of APIs, right, that we can use. For example, there's some API like JSON placeholder. So they provide some free fake APIs which developers can use to display information into their page while learning the API handling. These are many APIs here like users, to do, and if you click on users, I get all this information of users which I can display on my page. All right. There are other few APIs like um, api.github.com as user. So this is another example of API which GitHub is has published users information, where we can access this and just display into our React page. So these are the examples of APIs which is available. We can just use them, and or we can access them and display those fields into our page. So let's take a look how we can do that. So in index.js, I'm calling view1 component, right? So in view1 component, let's see how we can call the API. Okay, so for that, mm, let's do something. So we need to know the URL from where we want to access the, or we want to access the data, right? So that URL is something which we need to first create or declare the variable. I give URL equals, let's say I give this JSON placeholder users link. So this became my URL. Okay. which we want to access. Now, to access this, these elements from that API, we'll let's create a variable called data. I'll tell you in a bit why I'm creating this. So data, set data is a use state variable. Okay. So we have two variables. One is a URL which has the link, and second is a data variable which is blank at this time. Now let's so we'll take the help of use effect hook. Okay, use effect. If you remember, it invokes as soon as we load the page. We don't have to specifically call use effect hook. Okay, so I am going to give an arrow function over here, and then we will go ahead and fetch the API. Okay, so the function for that is fetch. So I'm giving fetch URL. It's going to fetch that URL, and then dot then it is going to create another function to pass the result. I'm using a variable res to it will have this res variable and convert that into JSON, because only then we will be able to read that content the way we want to. And then let's say dot then I'm going to create I'm going to send this data D. So D will have all the information that we have just converted in a JSON format. And now this data we are sending into our data variable by calling set data function. So this line number 8, 9, and 10, this is the syntax. So line number 8 means it will fetch the URL, and then it will convert the result into a JSON format, and then the result will be stored in the D, and that will go in the variable data, right? So that is the meaning of this 8, 9, 10 lines. And finally, we have everything from this API into this data variable. So we have the data. Next, we have to display the data, right? So for that, so we have formed a data.map method to print the name, but it is saying we need to have use state and use effect defined. So we have used here use state and also use effect, but we have not imported that. So let's import it. Use state, comma, use effect. Okay. Now, so this is the program which will fetch this JSON placeholder users API, because we have given that in this URL, and then we have a use state variable called data, and in the data variable we are going to store entire output by using the fetch function. And then whatever we have in the data variable, we are using data.map function to display that in each row. All right, so let's see the output of this program. Okay, so now you see the output on the screen. So what we have done is, here in the use state, we had to create this as an array, and because we are going to store the result in an array format. So now this way we can view the output on the screen. So this is how we access API to display, which is what in other words called as fetch API. Now next, let's see another example. So this we tried of JSON. Let's try to pull this particular API, which is GitHub API. I'm copying that URL and then just replacing it here. Now we should see a different result. I'm trying to print name. Let's see if name is there in this. Okay, there's no such thing called name. All these fields are there, like login, ID, node, avatar, and things like that. So let's use this login variable. So I'll give obj dot login. Now I should get here. all the login names from that API, right? So this is how we can access these all variables. All right. Now I can also use this URL, okay, and display all this information on our screen. And so this is about how to access API. Let's see one more example. This is another API list which is showing the information about these three users. And since this is running on my local, we will be able to modify this API. Let's go ahead and see how we can modify. Modify means, let's say I want to add a new record in this API. I want to add a new user or a new entity. For that, we need to create another component called add. So let me close this and create a new add one .js. So this is what I want to create, add one. And then what I'll do is in index.js, instead of view one, I will give add one. Okay. We are all set. So now if you see, I'm getting the add one page because add one has nothing at this time. It is only showing this heading. But now what I want to do is I want to add a new row or new record in this API. Okay. So let's see how we can achieve that goal. So again, it is similar coding. I have to first create a URL. So we want the URL that we want to access. URL equals. Then I will give this URL, API URL, and then uh, what I will do is I will go ahead and create two variables because I want to create a form to submit it, right? Or what we can do is I'll write a function here. So let's say create a variable named name because we want to store name and email in this, right? Let me have constant a name, comma, I give set name. I have use state. Okay. Similarly, const uh, email, comma, email, set email. This also will be use state. Okay. These two variables I've created. URL also I've mentioned. Okay. Now go ahead and create the form. Okay. So come inside this and let's create a form. So to save time, I will just paste this form which I've already written. This form is nothing but it will have two text boxes and a button. So this is the form that you see on the screen. This is just a form with two text boxes and a button. So whatever I'm typing in this name field will be stored in this name variable, and whatever I'm typing in the email field will be stored in this email variable. So that's pretty much no, we are already aware of. What we are learning now is when we click on the submit button, these two data should go and append in this API, right? That is what we want to do. So for that, that means when you click on this button, something should happen, right? So for that, let's call a function on click handle submit. Okay. This function I'm going to call when we click on the button. That function should update this information in the API, right? So let's create that function and submit. Okay. Now this function we will use to update or add API. Okay. So now we're to use the same fetch method. Okay. In the fetch, I have to call URL, right? Now, along with the URL, there's an option I can pass some more information like this. So fetch URL and then I can give information like method. So the method should be post because we want to update in this URL. And then we have to also pass some header because header has to be given compulsorily because that's how the system understand that what kind of information we are sending. It should be content type, okay, and colon, and then we give application JSON. So we're going to send the JSON information into that API, and then it has to accept application.json, right? So this information we had given, and now we have to mention the body part what we are going to send. We're going to send JSON. I'll just tell you in a bit what I'm doing, stringify and all that. So we are going to send uh, this item which will have some data, that data into this particular URL. Okay, and this will happen when we click on the button. All right. Okay. So now we have to form this item, right? What this item is nothing but it should have the information about name and email. So what we will do, we'll go ahead and create an object item. Create an item object over here, and then creating two variables, two key value, name equals name, and then email is email. This name variable is nothing but whatever name we have typed in the text box, which is in line number 5. That's what it is. Whereas email is whatever we typed in the text box. So both name and email will be stored in this name and email, keys, and that is what will come into this item variable. Okay, and then you will go ahead and submit it. So let's see, showing bunch of errors over here. So we've given headers, right? The headers we have given content type, okay, and we given application JSON over here, and then accept application JSON and stringify. So now we got that form, and also we have written the function. So let's see what coding we have done so far. First, we created these variables URL, name, and email as a use state, and then we also created an object called item, which has this name and email no values, which will update in this form that we created below, right? And when you click on the submit button, handle submit function will be called, and it comes with this handle submit. It will fetch the URL that we have given here. Okay, this URL will be fetched, and then method will be post. And because method is post, it is going to put this item, whatever we have in the item variable into the API. And in order to put that into the API, we have to convert that into the string. That is why we give JSON.stringify. Okay, once we give JSON.stringify, this will go and store in that particular API. So let's see whether it is working or not. So right now here I have three rows, right? Now if I come to this particular form and if I add a new one, okay, let's say, yeah, and html.com, click on submit. Now if you come and check here, so here you would see a new entry has been made, which is RIA and RIA, right? So that is what we have just submitted. So that's about how to add record, or add data into an API. In other words, we use the method post. All right. So we have seen so far how to fetch data from API and how to add a new row in an API. Let's go ahead and see how to modify an API, right? How to modify something in the API. So for that, we have to use a method called put. So instead of post, we will use put. Okay, remaining everything is same. One other difference is in the URL, we have to mention the ID name. So let's create a form for that. Okay, so let's uh, update. So I'm going to create a new component, okay, in the SRC called update1.js. Okay, so update one. Now in index.js, let me import update one. Okay, and here instead of add, I'm going to invoke update one. Okay, now if you see the output, there's nothing here. Only update one is getting displayed because I have not made any changes to that file. Okay, so update is pretty much same like post. The only difference is it will be having a method put instead of post. Okay, so instead of coding whole thing one more time, I'm going to um, paste same code over here. So basically it's handle submit, right? Handle submit is going to put the information instead of posting, instead of adding it. So same form we will create a similar kind of form. So let's have a same form asking us the details, right? Name and email and all that. And then let's put this here. Okay. I have this form. Okay, fragment is missing. Why this button came over here. Okay. Now all these elements have been created. Now let's import use state and all that. Also, we have to have this item, right? Because that is what we are going to update. So let's have that here. excuse me. So all the variables, right? So name, ID, email, everything are pretty much here, which is exact same program that we have just written for post, right? It's the exact same program. I just want to create a separate file so that you can use it for our future sessions. So same ID, username, sorry, ID, name, and email. All these three used variables are created, and we have URL. And this item is the object. In this item, we'll have this name and email, whatever we have no, typed here. All right. Now, okay, so we have one error here. Set email. Okay, so set ID, set name, set email, and then we are calling. Okay, I thought we created set email. Let me save this. Oh, for some reason I gave this inside this function. Should be outside actually. Now we have created the form, right? And which is same like post form, but then we have an additional field called ID, right? So the purpose of this ID is if you want to update a particular row, for example, I want to update this John and text instead of test mail, I want to make it Gmail, but the ID of John is one, right? So you see the code how it has been written. These variables have been declared. Then we have a handle submit function. We are using async and await because these two keywords we have to use it in case there is a delay. It will throw an error. So we have to give this async and await. This is same as JavaScript that we have learned. It's the exact same thing. Nothing new over here. And because of that, this fetch function will wait to perform any other action, until it receives everything or until it creates the connection. And then we have an update no form. These three text boxes we created, and below the submit button, we're calling handle submit function. In the handle submit function, we are fetching this URL and giving a method post. You see here, when we fetch the URL, we give an ID over here. You see that? That means we are fetching an exact that particular ID, because if I want to change this ID number one, which is what I am going to enter here. So let's say here, I want to change ID number one, which is John. Okay. So for some reason, set ID. Okay. I thought I changed it. Set ID is the variable which we are using it in update. So ID, first ID, we're going to change, and then same name, John. I thought it's okay. I'm saving it. It's not getting saved or something. Let me refresh this page. Okay. So ID one, and then John, and then John at Gmail. So you see earlier the value for this email was john at testmail.com. Now I'm changing it to john at gmail.com and clicking on submit button. And if you come here and refresh this page, you see that the email ID has been changed to Gmail, right? So this is how we can make changes to an API. It's pretty much same like post, but instead of post, we give put method, and we are directly calling that ID and updating the value. Okay, so this is about put uh, method. All right, the last one is how we can delete a particular item, right? So if I want to delete something, how do we do that? For that, let's create another component called delete. So I'm going to create a new component under src called delete1.js. See delete, and then in this index.js I am calling delete one. Let's import delete one. Okay, so it's pretty much done. If you see the output, I'm getting okay, spelling delete one. Right? So I'm getting here the output as delete one. So we are all set with this delete component to begin with, and we have to create a form so that we can delete any particular item in this API. For example, I want to delete this first ID. I should have a form which we can use to delete it. Okay, so let's create a very simple form. Uh, again, this will have the same variables. Okay. Um, URL and stuff like that. So I have URL and an ID, two fields I'm using, URL and ID. Okay, and then we'll have a form below. So let's have this form. The form basically will only ask for the ID because we want to delete the ID alone, right? The form will ask the ID. Excuse me. All right. Now we have to import use state, right? That is done. Use state has been imported and form has been given. And then let's write a function. That means when you click on this button, it will call a function which will delete, which is going to delete that particular item. So this is the function. So del request is the function which we will call as soon as we click on this submit button. And what it will do when we click on the submit button, what it will do, it will fetch this URL along with this ID. Okay, so URL, suppose I have passed one, it is going to access the API with one as the ID, then method has given has been delete. So let's say if I give employees slash one, this is what has been getting accessed. So how it will work is, see in this form. Okay, so let's see what else wrong in this. Use state as capital. Okay. So this is the simple form with asking only ID. Okay. So if I enter an ID one and then click on submit button, it will call this del request function in del request form. So as soon as I type the ID number one here, this set ID method will be function will be called, right, in line number 16, and this value will be updated to the variable ID. So ID will be one now, and then we invoke del request function. Del request function will fetch this URL with this ID. That means it will fetch the no the information of ID number one, and then it deletes method equals delete means it will delete that particular item, right? So now you see before deleting I have this John, or let's say here I have all these items, and when I click on the submit and then come to this API, refresh the screen, see the John record has been deleted, ID number one is not there anymore. That is what this delete method is, right? Which you can use to delete an item from an API. Okay, so that's pretty much on working with API in React.js. So predominantly we have seen fetch function. We can use fetch to access the URL, and then we have used methods such as post, put, delete, right? So post will insert a new row, put will update an existing row, and delete will delete the entire row, right? So please try it out. Please try all these options, all these methods, and in the next session we will learn how to have a small page with having a link of all these four components together so that we can access it based on user's choice. Now all these four components are created, so keep these components as it is, save these components. In the next session we will use the same components and create a page using routers. All right, so all right, please try it out and let me know in case of any questions. Thank you.